Epilepsy is a neurological condition that can affect anyone at any time. This documentary will consist of a number of interviews from epilepsy nurses, charities, support groups and families. Epilepsy is a tendency to have recurrent seizures that originate within the brain that affects around 600,000 people in the UK, 1 in 10 of which are children. On average, 87 people per day are diagnosed with epilepsy, and only 52% of which are controlled.
Hello, I'm Carol Flinders. I'm the practice nurse at Ramsbury Surgery in Wiltshire, and I'm the epilepsy lead nurse there, which basically means that I keep a record of the register and help the patients if they've got any problems to guide them on the right pathways to the right people. My practice size is 8,500 patients, and 41 are diagnosed with epilepsy. 5 of those are ladies of childbearing age. Another 5 have severe learning difficulties, and unfortunately they fit 5-6 times a day, even more, despite how much drugs that they're on. And then the rest are elderly that have been diagnosed epileptic since they were little, and they probably only had one fit in their life. A lot of patients, they can have it from birth or after an head injury, or it can just start up through stress, and that presents as collapsing or having or faint and then jerking body movements, and then they get taken into A&E, query fitting, and not just a faint. And then it has to be diagnosed correctly by EEG, which is echo encephalogram, and that's just it monitors the brain activity, electrical brain activity, and it'll show any abnormality. It can also be diagnosed with an MRI scan or a CT scan. Both work different. One's ultrasound imaging, one's the electronic imaging, but that also shows different activities in the brain and any malformations in blood flow and things like that, because you can start epilepsy after having a stroke.
My name is Sarah Field, and this is my son Ben. His first seizure was a tonic-clonic seizure, and we did think it was his last. It's like the last breath, and you don't know what's going on, you haven't seen one before, and it's the most scary experience. He was taken into hospital. We were told it was a femoral convulsion, it would never happen again, and to keep him cool. So we stripped him down to his vest and sponged him, thinking, we just need to keep him cool. It's our fault. I was 18. I don't know. Something that I'd done wrong if I'd overheated him. But unfortunately, he had another seizure the next day, and it just carried on from there. We managed to get control of those, and his seizures then mutated to tonic seizures. If he has the cluster of 100 seizures, you can guarantee the next night he'll happen again and again and again. And you get stuck in this catch-22, where something's triggered the seizure, off, whether it be dietary or temperature or something like that. But then through lack of sleep, it will go again the next night and the next night, and you get stuck into this, this cycle.
I'm Amy Jenkins, and I am married to Charlie, who is 6 years old, on my own, and I noticed that something wasn't right. He's on a changing mat, and he was just steering, and he was just gently shaking, except like it was kept happening, and it was scary. He was foaming at the mouth, but I didn't know what was wrong with him. I've never seen a seizure in my life. I just assumed that it was, even though I've got a young child, I just assumed it was normal, kind of he was just around. These episodes kept going on until it was in August in 2010 that I finally got a diagnosis of epilepsy, where he was having like 200 seizures a day. It's a mixture of tonic-clonic seizures of falling, stiffness, shaking, going with the mouth. We had about 3 months in hospital then. The medication was introduced. It was introduced first at the start of my end, and the seizures were just getting worse. He went with status. He had a prolonged seizure, and he was going about an hour long. And then they transferred him to a different hospital and gave him a lot more medication. They started on the medication. It didn't help these seizures, so they gave him another medication. So it was all kind of got on quite quickly within the 3 months. And slowly, but surely the seizures slowly reduced and reduced to the point where today now he just has a couple of seizures a day, but the majority of them are at night. That's why he has the pillow. It could be, as soon as he goes to sleep, he'll have myoclonic seizures. The minute he falls asleep, he'll just jerk constantly, just all throughout the night, and then he'll have tonic-clonic seizures as well, where he'll lose his bladder. But he's not aware of having a seizure until he's woke up and realises he's wet. He's having a look at see whether or not he's on the autistic spectrum. He's got learning difficulties, but considered, you wouldn't know, he was a hammer to protect himself. If he didn't have his hammer, I don't think you would know that there's really anything wrong with him.
A seizure happens when there is a sudden burst of intense electrical activity in the brain. This disruption can lead to a number of symptoms, which can vary depending on where the disruption occurs in the brain. There are around 40 different types of seizures, which can be defined into categories. These categories are atonic, also known as drop, tonic, myoclonic, clonic, and focal, also known as partial. There are many different things that can trigger a seizure, such as photosensitivity, stress, sleep deprivation, sudden loud noises, excitement, alcohol and drugs, and menstruation. But sometimes there are not triggers that can activate a person's seizures. If you witness a person having a tonic-clonic seizure, you must take action. Assess the situation, cushion their head, check the time to see how long the seizure lasts, look for an identification card or a medical bracelet. Once the seizure is over, put them on their side in the recovery position and stay with them to reassure them. Never restrain the person, put anything in their mouth. Here are some examples of what a seizure may look like. Warning: some viewers may find the following scenes distressing.
Did?
Good.
Something really funny? Oh. Come on, baby. You okay?
So sometimes a partial seizure can just be experienced by tingling, twitching. It can look as though you're daydreaming, and then that can develop into a tonic-clonic one. They may not even know that there's anything wrong. A tonic-clonic is jerky body movements. They can be incontinent of urine, they can bite the tongue, they can actually froth at the mouth sometimes. A lot of patients suffer as they have a warning: smell, sights, dizziness in their eyes.
There are several seizure prevention methods, such as anti-epileptic drugs, surgery, diets, and vagus nerve stimulators.
Hello, my name's Angela Lawley. I'm 53. I had my first seizure when I was 3 after the whooping cough injection. However, it could have been an afebrile seizure. When I didn't have any more until I was 13, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I'd been on holiday, I'd had one out of the blue, and I had a test, I had an EEG. This was a sleeping EEG. I had been put on different medications which hadn't actually controlled the seizures. I'd been put on Tegretol, Mebrol. My first one I think was phenobarbital. Probably a year or so after that I was put on Epilim, which is sodium valproate. That controlled me quite well. It was usually after I hadn't had much sleep I had a seizure.
Anti-epileptic drugs. There are many anti-epileptic drugs that can help control seizures. Anti-epileptic drugs are the first choice in which your GP or neurologist will give to you when first diagnosed. Anti-epileptic drugs are considered the most effective way of treating those with epilepsy, and 70% of those are controlled. Although this is the most effective way, there are side effects.
This is Caris. She's 4, nearly 5, aren't you? What have you got in your head?
Epilepsy.
That's right. How old were you when you first had the very first one? You were 5.5 months, weren't you? You just come out of the bath and you had a shaky. And then you were diagnosed on January 27th, 2011. She's on oxycarbazepine and sodium valproate. And then she's got the beclometazolam for emergencies. Don't we? But that's not very nice, that one, is it? You like the other two, don't you? They taste nice. You get angry sometimes, don't you? You can't control it. And sometimes you just want to run around like a lunatic for a bit, don't you, as well? And sometimes your hair falls out, doesn't it? High fat, low carb diet. Basically lots of butter, cream, red meat. Lots of strawberries. Everything's limited and everything's got to be weighed out down to the last gram. But you've got to have a special vitamin drink, haven't you, every day? You've got a special snack for school, special lunch. You can have jelly, that's a nice one, isn't it? If it's successful, it will cure her. So she could be on it for 3 months to see if it's worked. If it hasn't worked, then she comes off it, and it's next option I think was going to go on the street discussing surgery. Otherwise it's on for 2 years, and after that you'll be better. Epilepsy all gone, isn't it? So that's why it's all magic.
Brain surgery is another option that can help control seizures. This is only considered if anti-epileptic drugs have not controlled the epilepsy. Many tests need to be done to find out whether surgery would be a suitable treatment. These tests need to recognise the epilepsy in a specific brain location. Yet again, there are many risks that follow surgery. Vagus nerve stimulator uses a small generator that is implanted under the skin below the left collarbone. This is connected to a lead with 2 coils at one end. These coils are wrapped around the vagus nerve at one side of the neck, under the skin, during a small operation. This works by sending electrical impulses at intervals throughout the day to the brain. This will help prevent electrical activity that causes seizures. Although the vagus nerve stimulator can help reduce the amount of seizures, it is unlikely to completely stop seizures, and it does not cure epilepsy. Women with epilepsy take a risk when becoming pregnant. 4 in 1,000 pregnancies are those of epileptic women. Up to 46% of them can have increased frequency of seizures. There are also risks that some anti-epileptic drugs can cause defects within the fetus.
Now, Lamictal is not an enzyme-inducing tablet, and we have to, if girls are on that, then we have to take them off because it can cause teratoma in the fetus if they get pregnant on that. So we have to make sure that they're off that first.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was on sodium valproate, and I had to be taken off that because it could have been harm to the baby. After I had my daughter, I had my first seizure about a month afterwards. This meant that I had to change the medication that I was having and stop breastfeeding because of it being transferred to my daughter. I was told that I had, at that time, there was a 1% chance of the baby having epilepsy as well.
SUDEP is sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. Epileptics are 11 times more prone to premature death to those who do not have this condition. 1 in every 1,000 deaths per year are those of people with epilepsy. Karen Robinson's daughter, Nikki, fell victim to SUDEP at the age of 23. Karen is here to tell us her story of Nikki's life.
Right, my name's Karen Robinson and I am mum to the late Nikki Robinson, who was 23 when she passed through SUDEP, which is unexpected death in epilepsy. She was diagnosed with her epilepsy on her 7th birthday at Peterborough District Hospital, which started her medical investigations into trying to get it under control, which we actually never did. She woke up and on her first seizure, I walked past her bedroom and she was making this strange noise and I thought she was messing about. My other daughter, Jamie, said, well, she's been doing that for ages. So I thought, right, something's wrong. She came out of that seizure actually, and it happened again the next day. And the next day after that in school, she was incontinent in the playground. So we then took her to the hospital and that started the ball rolling. A number of years and a number of medications later, actually, she never did gain any control, but it was after the first year I said to her first paediatrician, how long does this typically take to get under control? And they said, well, usually within 2 weeks. So I knew that a year down the line, something wasn't normal. Vagal nerve stimulator was mentioned and we looked into it and I spoke with neurologists and when I asked questions I didn't actually want to go ahead with it. I did ask that if the vagal nerve stimulator didn't work, then what happens? And I'm aware that I call it the pacemaker, I'm aware that the piece of equipment is removed from just under the chest cavity. However, when I asked about the wire that is connected to the vagal nerve, they said that it wasn't removed. And when I asked how that could impact on Nikki's life in later life, they couldn't answer the question because they're not there yet. So it was something that we deemed we wouldn't go down that route because we don't have any long-term answers for. So again, we was back to trying different medications. Over a lifetime, we tried 25 different medications and combinations, of which only one done anything. Over Nikki's lifetime, her education was the first fight, really. She wanted what every other child has, which her epilepsy did interfere with a lot. She wanted friendships. They disappeared. She wanted what was normal. Our first fight was to get support within her local school, which she was quite protected in, so we only asked for a support worker to be with her during times when she could be in difficulty, i.e. swimming and games and cookery. However, when she then moved on to secondary school, which was out in the village, out of our village, she would need to get on a bus. So I asked for hours to be, full-time hours to be for Nikki, full-time hours of support. They offered to put the driver with a telephone, so in the case of a seizure, he could call for emergency services. So I had to say to them, well, if she has a seizure, you've got 30 children on a bus, what are you going to do with the other 30 children while Nikki has a seizure, which they hadn't considered. Then they offered to put support on the bus with Nikki, but the situation would still be the same, so again we turned it down. Eventually, after fighting, we got one-to-one transport. I rang her neurologist at the time and said there are such things as schools for the deaf and the blind, is there such a thing as schools for epilepsy? And he said yes, there was 3, and one of them was in East Anglia, so I made a phone call, and they said that there was there were spaces, but it was with a huge fight with the education authority. So I had to again give them lots of different scenarios for Nikki to have the funding to go into an epilepsy school, which covers absolutely everything for epilepsy, including SUDEP. She was there from the age of 13 to 21, 22 when she left that facility. She, at the time, was still having 200 seizures a month and spent lots of time in recovery in a wheelchair. And I used to pick her up on a Friday evening and she'd be looking at her knees. She was recovering from seizures. She would have them daytime and nighttime. And we'd bring her home, she'd have a weekend here, and we would then take her back on the Sunday evening. With Nikki having so many seizures, from the age of 8 to the age of 16, she had very little memory. Now, we're not sure if that was due to the immense amount of medication she was taking or whether it was due to the epilepsy. And I think when you read these reports, I think it's never really a clear cut whether it's one or the other. And we never did find out. But when she had her last drug change in 2006, her memory improved greatly. All of a sudden life became a lot more bearable for Nikki. She could access life and did. She never cancelled anything, it was only ever postponed until a better day. Nikki lived her life to her fullest limits and never let any challenge get in her way, which makes me proud actually, considering I know how difficult her life was. Towards the end of her life she had 2 different types of seizures. One was tonic-clonic and the other a complex partial. Her tonic-clonic seizures were probably her most harmful physically. She, over the years, has had numerous bangs on the head. She has had huge gashes on her face. She lost her front teeth from seizures. She broke her collarbone from seizures, and they were all tonic-clonic seizures. Her complex partial, so her absent type seizures, were, I think, where she was more vulnerable because they lasted for such a long time. Typically you read that they last 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. Nikki's very often lasted between 15 and 25 minutes, whereby Nikki could walk around, she'd walk out of the house, she would walk around to neighbours' houses, but she had no recollection that she'd done it. We're not sure how Nikki passed. We know that it was SUDEP. When Nikki left college, she wanted to be independent as possible. Nikki was very able, cooked and cleaned herself for herself. The only thing she needed support with was if she had a seizure. So she did eventually get into her own home, and it was all okay. She decorated it how she wanted it, she made her own choices, and then daytime staff would come in on a rota basis to cover 12-hour days. Always young staff, so that she wasn't going out with an old biddy, she was going out with age-appropriate people. And she would go out, she'd do her shopping, she'd do her college. Before she passed, she had a recent, what they call fit for work interview with the benefits people, telling them that she wanted to work. And they said that we usually get people coming here and say, I have seizures and I can't work. But you're coming in here saying, I have seizures and I want to work. Unfortunately, they deemed her unemployable due to her epilepsy, and told her to put a positive energy into voluntary work, which she did do. She went to bed on the Wednesday evening, telling me that she was going to be asking for more hours as she was meeting new people and enjoying working in the shop. They was going to teach her how to use the till, and unfortunately that never happened, but she did go to bed happy. I found her on the Thursday morning, 21st of March, in sleeping position. So I'm very much comforted knowing that she fell asleep and didn't know anything about not waking up. You know, she had a fulfilled life, and I'm very proud of her.
There are many epilepsy charities, each one providing support for different things for people with epilepsy. But what they have in common is that they all fight for the same cause: to help raise awareness and find a cure for epilepsy. Epilepsy Sucks UK is a charity that helps fund anti-suffocation pillows for those who need support at night. Sally Ann Gold, the founder of the charity, is here to tell us more.
The main reason was that, we had so many people in similar situations who felt the way we did, about the lack of support and things like that. We thought that we're in a position where we can do something, and what can we do that can actually make a difference, something physical, rather than just giving advice. And then we came across the pillows. And when we found all this research, to say that they weren't just gimmicky, they could actually possibly save somebody's life. 45 quid for a pillow, we thought we've got to do this. Money comes in, money goes out on pillows. It's straightforward. To be honest, the bank account floats around £4,000, and to make an order of 40 pillows a month, that's about £2,000. So we're on a very fine edge. We've got people wanting pillows, and it's really difficult, isn't it?
Epilepsy Action is another charity that helps raise awareness for epilepsy within the UK.
My name's Louise and I work in the press office at Epilepsy Action. Epilepsy Action is the UK's leading epilepsy charity, and so we do everything we can to improve the lives of everybody with epilepsy in the UK. There's around 600,000 people with epilepsy living in the UK, so it is a large number. So what we do is do everything that we can to make those people's lives easier. So we offer things like a free phone helpline. We have an advice and information team who are constantly there to support people with epilepsy. We also do a lot to raise awareness of epilepsy. So many of the people with epilepsy that we speak to tell us that people don't always understand epilepsy. They don't know what it is or how it can affect people. And so what we do is try to break down some of those misconceptions misconceptions and misunderstandings, so that we can help people with epilepsy, find employment, carry on as normal in school, and just live, as normal and full life as possible. So a really, really big part of what we want to do is tell people about epilepsy, and sort of reduce some of the stigma surrounding it. We're a member-led organisation. What we hear from our members a lot is that not enough people know about epilepsy, and so part of what we do is raise awareness of epilepsy. We do that through regular campaigns, so we run awareness campaigns. One of the ones we've done most recently is a campaign called Take Epilepsy Action, which was all about teaching the general public about first aid for seizures and what the correct things are to do. That was in response to a survey that we did. So what we did is we went out out all around the country to tell people what to do. We also raise awareness through campaigning and lobbying politicians. So we make sure that people with epilepsy are represented when politicians are discussing things like welfare, benefits, and obviously the NHS and health services. So one of the things that we've been working on recently is an epilepsy storyline in the BBC soap EastEnders. We have had sort of previously, in the last couple of years, we have had sort of a couple of soap characters develop epilepsy. So there was one in Neighbours. People might remember the character David Platt in Coronation Street, and now there's going to be one in EastEnders. So although there's still lots of work to be done to raise awareness of epilepsy and sort of encourage people to understand it, it obviously is a really positive thing that it is being talked about in mainstream soaps. So with regard to EastEnders, they actually approached us at Epilepsy Action, and we went down and sort of watched the seizure scene being filmed. We told the actor about epilepsy, how somebody might feel before a seizure, what happens during a seizure, and how that person might feel when they come round. And I think that's really good because obviously it shows that a programme like EastEnders is obviously taking epilepsy seriously. 95% of our income comes from people that make donations or fundraise for us. So having those people is vital to help us to carry on our work supporting people with epilepsy. All of the money that we raise goes directly to supporting and helping people with epilepsy across the UK. So we do things like we have free phone and online helplines that help people maybe when they've been recently diagnosed with epilepsy and they don't know what to do or where to turn. We're there for them. We also do things. We like fund epilepsy specialist nurses. We also provide funds for research. So research into mainly the social impacts of living with epilepsy. So how does epilepsy affect somebody's life when they're diagnosed, and what can we do to make that better for them? We also use the money that we raise for our awareness raising campaigns and campaigning for better health services for people with epilepsy. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is we've recently done some work around the quality of epilepsy health services around the country, and found that a lot of those they're not good enough, and they're not doing the best that they can for people with epilepsy.
There are now smartphone apps that are free and available to download. These apps can help people with epilepsy to record their seizures, have medical advice, and even help those with first aid advice. There are helplines also available for people with epilepsy, as well as for the general public. Epilepsy Action, Young Epilepsy, which supports people with epilepsy under the age of 18, Epilepsy Scotland, as well as SUDEP Action, who help to give factual information about SUDEP, as well as support to those who have fallen victim to SUDEP.
So the best charity which we won last year, the best organisation, Young Epilepsy have been going for years, so well established for them to recognise us as a champion organisation for what we do is amazing.
Even though you have epilepsy, you can carry on quite a normal life. There are a few drawbacks with the medication. It may slow you up a bit, but I I don't think anybody would know much difference.